This call is now being recorded.
My name is Randall Rosado. Most of my friends and family call me Randy. I've been trapped in Florida's corrupt criminal injustice system since June 28, 2016, when I was arrested, or more like kidnapped, from my New York residence based on a Florida warrant I was unaware of. I was charged with a Florida statute most people have never heard of, called simulation of the legal process. It's considered a form of fraud, and the allegations involve documents pertaining to some public officials who have abused their power and used the system that they control to deny me the right to due process and a fair trial so they can force a conviction. This was a malicious prosecution to satisfy a personal vendetta by judges in Lee County, Florida. The judges who were alleged victims used their own court and their judge friends to prosecute me in this one-of-a-kind case. They fabricated the charges against me, sparing no expense in manipulating the entire process. The state attorney's office in the 20th Circuit and the circuit judges kept me stuck in jail and blocked me from having a defense for more than 3 years while awaiting trial. I had no access to a law library and no ability to search case laws. Now, the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution is supposed to protect Americans from excessive bail, yet the Lee County judges denied me reasonable bail to keep me stuck in jail and unable to properly fight my case. My bond was $1.5 million, which is higher than people who are actually charged with murder. I have no criminal background or history of violence, but have been treated like a violent career criminal. They stacked 15 frivolous charges against me to inflate my bond and score sheet, then set the bail at 20 times higher than the county's standard bond schedule of $5,000 for a count of third-degree felony. My charges were set at $100,000 per count. The only other case with the same charges to go to trial in the entire state had a bond of $500 per count. That makes my bond 200 times higher. Multiple judges denied me a bond reduction. The first judge said I didn't have enough ties to the community, and the second judge said I was a danger to the community, despite my charges being nonviolent and my lack of a criminal history. The bottom line is that they did everything in their power to keep me from getting out to fight these false allegations. Just to put this excessive bond into perspective, the other day I read a story in the newspaper about a man named Joseph Williams who was released early from the county jail in Hillsborough County, Florida, on March 19th due to coronavirus. The following day, he was arrested on charges of second-degree murder, and get this, his bond was $280,000, which is one-fifth of what mine was. There was also a story about a 19-year-old St. Lucie man, I think his name was Darian Crow or something, who allegedly shot 2 people, sending them to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. The story reported that during a search, the officers found the guns used for the shootings, 5 ounces of cannabis, MDA, which is also known on the street as Molly, THC concentrate, and they even found counterfeit money. Mr. Crow was given a $15,000 bond. I mean, is something wrong with this picture? My bond is $1.5 million because some angry public officials had their feelings hurt, and someone accused of shooting 2 people has a $15,000 bond. But we can't trust the news either. The state maliciously spread lies and dictated news stories all over the country, calling me a paper terrorist and even comparing me to Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber who was executed for the 1995 bombing of a federal building. What do I have to do with Timothy McVeigh? You talk about a load of crap. I've been accused of documents that were filed by other people, and the state calls them fraudulent. In the Lee County case, the man who actually filed the documents with his own name on them pled guilty to the same accusations that I was charged with, and they gave him probation for his actions. I was charged with an entirely different statute and sentenced to 40 years in prison. I'm accused of giving bad advice, which is not even true. The man acted on his own based on what he studied, and I don't even see where the crime was committed. In order to simulate a legal process for fraudulent documents, there first needs to be a legal process to begin with. Florida law defines a legal process as documents filed into a court in Florida or the United States for the purpose of exercising jurisdiction, which is not the case at all. The documents in question were evidence exhibits and had no jurisdiction in a state court because they were federal in nature. Of course, the crooked judges denied my argument, which clearly proves an abuse of the statute by the prosecutor. They also violated the double jeopardy clause, not just by charging me with a different crime than the one pled guilty to by someone else, but also because I was charged 8 times with the same action so they can give me the maximum sentence of 5 years on each count. I mean, 99% of the time I would have been sentenced concurrently, which means the charges run together. Instead, I was sentenced consecutively just so they could stack up the sentence and give me 5 years on each of the 8 bogus counts, which is basically a life sentence of 40 years. Oh, yeah, and then there's the right to face my accusers under the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution. Apparently that doesn't apply to me either. Out of the 8 alleged victims, I only faced 3 of them. The other 5 were not even at trial, and there were no sworn statements or depositions from them. I thought the right to face our accusers was part of the fundamental fabric of our justice system. Well, not in Florida, at least not for me anyway. The state and the judges never had any intentions of playing fair from the very beginning. I was denied a copy of my arrest report even after completing the Freedom of Information Act request as instructed. It's now 4 years later, and I still haven't seen the arrest report. I can only imagine what they're hiding. Then there is the unlawful search of my home the day I was arrested. I have video evidence, FBI documents, and multiple sworn statements from the state investigator proving that my home was searched more than 5 hours prior to the existence of a signed warrant. Of course, this Fourth Amendment violation was ignored. Like I said, they've done everything to block my due process and right to a fair trial. When the judge removed my first attorney from the case, I ran out of money, so she appointed me an attorney who actually used to work for the prosecutor's office. His only goal was to help the state get me convicted. He threatened to hurt my defense after I filed a complaint against him. Then he conspired with the state to try and extort me by forcing me to plead guilty against my will, or trying to force me to plead guilty against my will, so that I would accept 20 years in prison or face additional charges. I tried to have this court-appointed attorney removed due to his threats and because of the conflict of interest from his affiliation with the co-defendant's attorney. But that was denied by the judge, who was determined to keep this one specific lawyer. I didn't even have a single conversation with my attorney for 21 months prior to trial, yet he invoiced the state nearly $40,000 in alleged services during that same time frame. I mean, he was clueless and had no defense prepared at all. He refused to take depositions of a single alleged victim because they included the same judges he was in front of on a daily basis. This was blatant corruption and an inside job all the way. My attempts to change venue were denied, and at the state's request, the first judge canceled the trial that was set for November of 2018, just 1 day before, because 2 of the state's witnesses couldn't make it. This clearly gave the prosecution an advantage, and then shortly after that, the judge removed herself from the case. The next judge was even worse, and just like the first one, he acted like a prosecutor from the bench. He allowed the state to violate the rules of discovery, and then let them ignore the court's deadlines from his own written orders. When I realized that the prosecution tampered with evidence by altering documents they claimed to have found on my computer, he refused me a computer forensic expert to inspect the state's discovery. There were 2 sets of rules, and the prosecution had special treatment. After I was railroaded and given this obscene sentence, the prosecutor's office spoke to the world in an online podcast and not only denied their crimes, specifically the extortion. They said I turned down an offer of 5 years probation prior to trial. This was certainly news to me because the alleged offer either never existed or was never shared with me by my attorney. When questioned about their written extortion attempt, the prosecutor's office said it wasn't a real offer. They didn't deny it, they just said it wasn't a real offer. Well, if that's the case, why was it presented to me? This makes no sense at all. I can go on and on about the state's violations and the blatant bias against me by the Lee County judges, but I'll let the appeal attorney address that. It may take some time for me to receive justice, but I have faith that God will see me through this. Everything happens for a reason, and I know the Lord has a special plan for my life. He will protect me from this evil. As I wait for the appeal, I'm now sitting in the St. Lucie County Jail facing similar charges. Lee County is working with this county, and once again I'm charged with documents filed by someone else who pled guilty and received probation, just like the other situation. Except this time, the alleged victims include a prosecutor from the state attorney's office here, as well as a sheriff who controls this jail. Yep, another inside job, an obvious conflict of interest. I fear for my safety every day I'm here. Who knows what's going to happen to me for sharing this message, because freedom of speech is highly frowned upon in Florida. The sheriff has already thrown me in confinement for writing a letter to the governor. I guess I'll see if there will be consequences for sharing my story here today. It's like being trapped in a dungeon with little access to the outside world, and I could be stuck here for years waiting on trial. It's all about power and money. Even the most simple cases here take years to prosecute because the state drags it out so the jail can keep making money each day we're here. Every inmate with a court-appointed attorney has the right to speedy trial waived without their consent. And since we don't get to go to most of our court hearings, we remain in the dark about the status of our cases. For this reason, people who can't afford to bail out or to hire a private attorney, they usually just left with no choice except to accept the state's offer because they're scared of losing at trial. This doesn't seem legal, but they get away with it every day because nobody knows what to do with it, to do about it. These county jails are miserable. They're designed for shorter-term stays of less than a year, yet many of us are stuck here for years on end. I've been trapped in these county jails for nearly 4 years without physical contact with my loved ones during that time. Proper exercise is not available to us. Access to the law is very limited. I wish I was in prison waiting on my appeal and waiting on the next trial. At least I would have access to a real law library and be able to move around. I'll be able to have in-person visits and actually be able to give my mother a hug. After this experience, my life just will never be the same. 2 years ago, my wife left me after 17 years together, and many of my friends and family stopped communicating with me after my arrest, all based on the lies told by the state and the media outlets they control. On the bright side, I'm blessed with 2 wonderful brothers and many great friends who have stood by me through this ordeal. My mother is my best friend and the strongest woman I've ever known. I love all of you, and I just can't thank you enough for your love and support, and I look forward to seeing all of you again very soon. I'm here today asking for your help to shed some light on my situation. I hope you will share my story and sign the online petition being sent to the governor, the president, or any news outlet willing to report honestly. Believe me, I'm not by myself either. Many people are getting abused by this corrupt system. What happened to me could easily happen to you and your family too. This corruption and abuse of power is outrageous. If an honest investigation took place, the judges and attorneys involved in my case would be disbarred. But that won't happen because the Florida Bar is a club whose members can do whatever they want, and they will all cover each other. There are no rules for them. I've been slandered and called all types of things, including a terrorist. They have labeled me as a so-called sovereign citizen because I studied concepts about taking ownership of my birth certificate. That certainly isn't a crime and has nothing to do with the actual charges against me. I did not create the documents used by the people whose actions and decisions I am blamed for, nor did I encourage anyone to do anything. These document templates and training have been on the internet for years. And even if I did give bad advice or do something wrong according to Florida statute, am I not entitled to due process and a fair trial? Should that be denied to me just because the judges and sheriffs in control of this system have a problem with me? Does it justify giving me a life sentence when I have no criminal history and my co-defendants were given probation? And while other people charged with manslaughter are getting a fraction of the time of like 10 years. Anyway, there are too many details about my case to share right now, but I thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Please keep me in your prayers. I would so greatly appreciate anything you could do to share my story and help me receive fair treatment. We are all entitled to due process and a fair trial. It's our right under the Constitution, and it's the foundation of our justice system. That's all I'm looking for. Thank you again, and God bless you.